easement running underground, that's fine.
So the CUP would only be required.
$1 million a mile for underground
For
cables.
anywhere else it's not.
It would
not
not be
permitted.
permitted.
What is the thought behind the RA?
Don't like
Because you're
that
not-
idea at all.
Because you're not gonna
The vast majority of,
be massive.
I remember it came from the developer request, so they gave us a list and we said, you know, we're not considering half of this list. In conversations with the board member responsible, the reasoning behind at least talking about the RA is it's where the vast majority of the substation is. If you don't put it in the RA, you run into some permanent, you only allow these things to go into industrial parks, there's a chance that they run products to them through the RA.
I'm just questioning why require CUP for RA district.
We use fire rate, a lot of fire rate.
I'm just curious.
It's catered to a particular project.
I don't, and granted, I don't know a whole lot about this topic, but I think a lot of homeowners are using it to supplement, you know, power and fees. But they would have to go through this.
No, for homeowners, this is utilities. So it wouldn't apply to homeowner.
And also,
Ron, did you have something?
Yeah, it's from what I've seen, if there's a fire on one of these things, water is really important to try and keep it, cool it down and make sure it doesn't spread to combustible things. So, and there's an EPA study that says you may have to have water on it for 12 hours. If you're an RA, where does the water come from?
I think it does depend on the battery technology. Some of them don't compete.
This is from July 2025, so.
Yeah, but I'm saying they have multiple, like there's lithium
Or
and
these
others that are being
Yeah.
used. Yeah.
some of the ones that we were in actually specifically stated that you don't use water to put out, to extinguish some of these.
But that's a fair point. is
But
that you have
lithium
something-
ion isn't affected by water.
What is the cooling methods? Well, some of them use closed loop water for cooling those systems also.
Yeah, we know as much as you all about the different offerings because there's only a singular developer.
We don't-
And if there's different battery, if there's different requirements for different
Sorry, so
batteries.
we're-
then
We don't wanna go to this line.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the question too would be if it's the CUP in any situation, it would seem to me that like some of those points, like what the battery technology would be in that given situation would be identified. And then any kind of specific, you know, emergency response plan, whatever, would kind of get put together based on the specifics. So it kind of lets it be addressed on a case-by-case basis in terms of what's being proposed, where it is, what's next to it, all those kind of things. I mean, I think that's probably the best part about it, is that the CUP review would be a part of it in any case.
But then every CUP theoretically, I would assume that the ordinance should establish a set of standards that each facility is checked by. And if you're just gonna leave it open-ended and say, well, they just have to go through, you know, that means every CUP application, unless you just approved one, you know, last year, has got a whole new,
Yeah, it's
a
different.
different set of requirements.
It's kind of the same trap we fall into with like special event facilities where there is, you know, existing ordinance regs, but then you have another set of conditions depending on that unique property.
It's like
Right.
specific.
And they're different
Site-specific stuff.
every time.
I would tend to agree, the CUP, I'm normally against CUPs, but in this case, I think it's pretty important. The battery technology is changing so fast we deal with Amazon a lot, and every couple of months they're coming in with new requirements for their charging. And I don't know how anybody can keep up with it, so I would keep it as generic as you can and tackle it through the CUP. Is what I would do. Is there a reason that, other than an RA, that it's a 200, other than fire, that it's a 200-foot setback across the board? Why would you have 200-foot setback in M2, for example?
That was replicated from our data center requirement.
And Eric, can you go to the version of the PowerPoint? Lloyd's point makes sense in this context as well.
For what, 200-foot setback for substation?
Most of the-
generic from all.
All right, I guess,
Yeah,
I had a
it's
question
like
too,
if
is
we make that
if this is
dimension.
by a substation, does the substation, if it doesn't have a 200-foot setback at the substation,
Yeah.
you wouldn't wanna require a 200-foot setback for this if you wanna locate it by a substation?
If that's the most logical place for them.
So does that, maybe, I don't know, maybe some of that language made that exempt, or that, I forget, there was a sentence there about where it needed to be required.
Accessory.
Yeah, if it's accessory to the, substation, then it would be exempt from the requirements, but that's only if it's accessory to it.
I guess that kind of leads to another question I was thinking about that is, what would make it accessory in that situation? I mean, to me, you know, the substation.
On the parcel.
So if it's on the same parcel, so that essentially, so if it's a substation, then if they had battery storage and it's on the same parcel.
Yeah.
It's
No,
whatever the substation would be for.
And there's a current ordinance, the zoning administrators determined that a public utility could put these on a substation parcel as part of being an accessory to the public utility that's operating there. And then Eric mentioned something that happened and is going into effect July 1st. From the state, they preempted localities on the solar projects and said, because all of ours went in, all our solar projects went in with conditions prohibiting battery storage on them. And the state legislature said, can't do that, all properties approved are solely allowed to have batteries as long as the battery megawatts don't exceed the panel production capacity. So whether we like it or not, somebody could do those by right, on those solar properties. But, sorry, did I answer your question? I guess.
Yeah, no, I think that,
Okay. And Liz, were you thinking by right in the RA when you were thinking it was a homeowner scale? Okay,
Yeah, that would,
yeah.
Is there a way in the ordinance so that we don't confuse it with homeowner scale battery?
We have had the same debate over solar. It's clear enough of a definition that a homeowner would be doing it accessory to the residential component of the home. They could put panels, solar panels on their roof too, and not go get a solar CUP, it's not utility scale.
What is the split between 600 kilowatt hours that's in the table? What is that about?
So that was something that we noticed, with certain localities, is that they have differing definitions for those 600 kilowatt hours. They also had the same requirements for those uses, and we weren't able to figure out why they had them split like that. But it seemed of note, so we included them in the chart.
kind of circling back to Ron's original point about water access or whatever, which all of it's kind of driven by the battery technology. Reading through the emergency operations plan requirements, is that kind of the intent of that requirement, that basically specific technology of the, that particular facility would have to have all of the kind of provisions in place, like if it was something that's extinguishable by water, where's the water coming from? If it's some other thing, is that the idea?
Yes, the emergency operations plan is essentially to make sure that the county fire marshal, they have the adequate training and equipment necessary to address it.
For that specific facility.
So if, so if the fire marshal determines they don't have enough breathing apparatus to service this data center, then it's a requirement, something that's gotta be mitigated by the applicant.
The way that we plan on handling that right now is through the siting agreement process. And we did that a little bit with the utility scale solar, but it was new at the time. But it's kind of like Proffers. It's a little different.
Yeah, why would, there's a sentence about the board could approve the facility even if the siting agreement isn't entered into. What's the?
That's from state code.
Yeah.
Say that again?
Oh.
That's a requirement from state code regarding the siting agreement.
Is that to give the board latitude, is that the idea?
I think it's to protect the developer.
Yeah.
If they refuse to negotiate or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, because the statement is that it can be used as a reason to deny a project, but it can't be the sole reason. The board has to have another valid reason to do so.
So the utility scale solar Barnesville, we got like 1.2 million in the siting agreements. but the other two were done before the siting agreement legislation came into effect, so. It has broad latitude, but because it's not proffers or conditions of a CUP, state legislators were like, well, we gotta make sure that this isn't extortion, so hence that language where you can deny it, but that can't be the only reason. But yes, that's my assumption about why that's in there. And from our perspective, it's safer to have it in our ordinance if it's replicated in state code most of the time, make it clear on our end.
Most of these storage facilities, like, they're designed once they know, like, there's no copy and paste, like, you're not gonna get the same footprint, you're not gonna have the same size, and it's all based off of the user, I assume, and then you'll get, I'm just trying to figure out how we reasonably review a CUP.
Yeah, you mean like, what do you require upfront as far as design to get?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what we're looking at and how to
You'll,
recommend approval.
based on the interest we've seen already, you'll have the end user, probably at the table for the CUP. Cause there's private battery companies that are doing it with contracts for the public utilities to apply a certain number of megawatt storage. The level of detail they'll go into as far as engineering, not knowing whether the CUP is gonna get approved, is probably still gonna be conceptual.
They're for utility company, would they ever,
They're typically owned by the private battery company, and then
Okay,
they
so
have a
not-
lease to take power out of the grid, put it back into the grid with the public utility. At least that's what how they've explained their purpose of their decisions.
Are we limiting the ownership to the battery companies then?
We are not. We probably can't.
So Billy Bob Septic and Battery Company could come out and do this.
Get a CUP, then you don't have your.
they own them.
They'd probably turn it down though, the water plant commission board would turn it down.
I mean, if they can't put together the materials to.
Yeah, they're not gonna be
able to do that.
This is big time stuff.
Would we ever be in a position where we would have to, or would be forced, but you know, if it's part of like large utility company and they need this to support users.
Yeah, I mean, you're not yet preempted by the state on forcing you to allow these things everywhere. You can't prevent them from going on solar, utility scale solar projects anymore. I don't know that it'll ever get to the point where they put them into the infrastructure category like they did with power lines, where we don't have choice on that. I think we're pretty far from that. I have read that, some of the utilities are putting them underneath of power lines, and it's begging the question of whether the localities can even regulate that piece of it. But I haven't seen that tried in Virginia yet.
Since you're not stacking them that high, what would stop them from putting it underground?
Thermal runaway concerns maybe like.
Well, it's a contained area, that's what would be nice about it. If you built a vault and something went wrong, explosion or anything, it's inside the vault. Runoff is all inside the vault.
So
I'm really concerned about the toxicity of something like this. Have you all, any of y'all, researched the data center battery storage? Anybody done any research on that? Well, I think we all should do it before we, go too fast or something like this. Because it looks like, the technology is advancing very quickly.
Remind me
I'm sorry. Go
the
ahead.
fee on the conditional use permit, and is there an annual or any sort of?
No, they have $750 filing fee for the CUP, and there's no fee after that.
Maybe I missed something, but if this is an accessory use to a data center, the op system for the data center,
That's not
that's
covered by
not
this
covered.
standard, no. That's allowed right now.
Okay.
If they could get a data center
So
permit.
we're talking about the big boys that are putting it back in.
This is grid
storing.
connected, sole purpose of the parcel is large batteries that pull
Store
power
it
off the
at night,
grid,
put it back
store
at
it for
peak.
peak usage, yep, that's what this is. And they generally are about the size of a shipping container.
Correct.
Yeah, and they do them in modules, and they separate the modules to keep them safe from each other. And I just glanced over and saw my wonderful friend, Mr. Ty Lawson, who's representing the applicant who requested this ordinance, and would be glad to answer any questions from this client's perspective, I'm sure.
Can I ask another question about the decommissioning plan?
Yeah,
I mean, let's say there was a catastrophe and the guy just said, well, I got a decommissioning plan, but they just walk away.
yeah, so the way that,
Can you
yeah,
get a bond
I can
for that?
only speak to what we do with the utility scale solar, which is, they prepare the decommissioning plan that says, there's 100 acres of solar panels. In order to decommission this facility, this is what you need to do, you can recycle these elements of it, and this is how you return it to its natural state. And then they take an engineer, put a cost estimate on implementing the decommissioning plan, and then give us a bond for the decommissioning plan. So we have that for all of our utility scale solar. It's gonna look very similar on this, I suspect.
Right.
Yeah, it was I believe it was new legislation this year that brought the battery energy systems into the decommissioning plan, but I admittedly haven't looked at it because we didn't allow them in the ordinance at all. but-
It's not from this year, but it is wrapped in the same ordinance
Okay.
as the, utility scale, facilities, solar facilities. I just don't think anyone's ever had those come up as their own intended use yet. Not that we can find. We have a couple of localities that now see them, so they're starting to adopt ordinances to it, but this is still a fairly new use.
A lot of people would like to see these things, these decommissioning plans happen for all sorts of uses. I mean,
Yeah.
think about some of the Rust Belt factories that were abandoned and stuff like that, but, it was a novel concept when they did it for solar, and I think it was seeing them spread across such a large acreage, and if they ever went out of style, if you will,
Right.
or replaced by more productive technology, they might just abandon it
Just
over
leave.
huge acreages and it just degrades. Yeah.
What is the lifespan of one of these things?
For the cell lifespan, Todd, do you know any information from your applicant?
Yeah, I think it's similar to a solar, but the technology is the description that you and I received, Wyatt, was these are like suitcases that go in and out, so the new batteries would be able to be replaced with whatever the newest technology is. So as long as you keep those up, it'll continue well into the future.
It's just a big up system is all it is.
Yeah, yeah. And then for full disclosure, the one who approached us on this, but there's been two others, I think, who've been looking at other properties in the county. AYPA, is that right, Ty?
Correct.
Yeah, and they're looking at, land that's currently zoned EM, to establish the use.
I know this is probably not this topic, but I'm having a hard time comprehending the CUP filing fee for something like this compared to
Oh,
an
yeah.
event center.
Yeah.
And the amount of the
It's-
county's public facilities being used for something like that versus, again, an
It's
event
something we
center.
need
So
to
I'm
review.
struggling with
We,
that with them right now.
We really came to realize it with the solar facilities, right?
Yeah.
And then now we have a data center that's going through the CUP, and the filing fee is the same as if you wanted to use your home for a special event center.
Yeah.
We'll work on fee schedule as a separate initiative. It's already kind of in process.
Guess, got a couple questions, Ty, for you, like, one with the modules, you're talking about height, you know, and if we're talking about storage container type things. Is the vision that it's like at most one stack, like two, you know, cause I think it's a fair point.
It is.
Yeah, if you just let it be whatever the district would allow, that could be taller than.
We're gonna be way under that, and it's been described as like a Sealand container, actually a little shorter.
Right.
And that's why it's easy to screen these things, and we provided, we're doing an ordinance for the county, but of course, we're looking at something specific. But it's screened all the way around the perimeter, and all you see is the landscaping. They're short. And they're all separated. There's a fire code that the Virginia code adopted last year that we all have to comply with. And it's spacing that's regulated by the state. And it's to address a fire concern, although the new technology, as somebody pointed out, is better and better all the time. And they're getting to a place where, as it was explained to Wyatt and me, they sense these things, and if they start getting warm, they shut them off, and you just pull them out.
I was thinking, too, just the comment about height early on, is that, you know, maybe that's a way to derive, you know, based on the typical height of the containers or something, if we wanna allow maximum stacking or whatever it may be, that sets the height. I mean, it would seem like it
Sure.
makes sense to have something that regulates that or controls it.
I mean, our client described, they've seen some in New York City and places where you have to do it. That doesn't apply here. They don't see that at all in our environment.
And from what you guys, in terms of your client, who you've kind of been familiar with, from a staff perspective, are they generally looking to be like adjoining substations or power lines or something? I mean, it seems to me we don't want them kind of scattered around. I mean, if they're gonna happen, we want them as close as possible to the infrastructure.
They want to, the conversation's great, but yeah, everything we've seen is they're right next to a substation. They are not owned by the substation owners, so not by Rappahannock or Shenandoah Valley or any of the others. But they want to be next to it because these are the things you want to turn, they're peakers. So when it's really cold, really hot, and we need power, that's when they turn on. So they want to be wired into the substation. The setback kind of threw me a little bit in that case, because we'd be right up against a substation, which is, no offense, but probably not the prettiest thing right now with the chain link fence and all that. We would have screening around our facility, so we're actually going to soften the view of that substation. And if we pulled away from it, it didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense if the goal was to screen.
I had a similar thing, in Loudon, we ended up having an ordinance, buffer ordinance there, where they were requiring buffers, the standards for like the substation were requiring buffers, and regardless of what they were next to, and so you had like data centers, substations, or substations, and some other industrial use, and the buffers didn't make any sense, it became kind of an operational. So I do think that if it's immediately adjoining the substation, there's really no point to an extra setback or buffer between those two uses. I don't know exactly how you wordsmith it, but it seems like that makes sense to
No, I
me.
think we're taking some good notes, and that'd be a clear point of feedback that we have to work on.
Can these get taxed like equipment?
That's something I haven't been able to get a clear answer for. I believe that they're probably gonna fall into some of the state legislation relative to renewable energy, where they have like a state depreciation scale, and there's some incentivizing of it, but I'm not positive on that.
And after the CUP process, so like permitting process, like they'll have to go through the whole, revise their master plan, get down to revising all of that, to then
Yeah,
it goes to that.
hope the site plan is a little further.
Hey, Ron.
Does the client, own and operate it, the facility? Does it own the land and then leases the facility to some group?
I think in this case, it is a lease, but it could be a sale. They're very large. They have, I've forgotten the number, Wyatt may remember, but they're in many states.
Is it reasonable to ask a developer how many of these they have done and how many?
He'd be happy to share a lot.
And his success rate? and-
Yes.
Okay.
And we actually have one in Virginia and the city of Chesapeake, if you want to get up close and personal. So we're in Virginia already.
Is that something we can get and then review and potentially come back to this subject, or is the board
don't think they're on any sort of time frame necessarily, but, generally with the committees, we try to keep it moving through, but if you all want to do like a homework assignment for us to bring back information, then we can certainly come. Beyond, example implementation stuff, what are we looking for?
Do you know what kind of batteries they're gonna use?
Yeah, these are, I believe there's sodium. It was interesting. I saw these regs that we gotta comply with, lithium and so on. You probably wanna say if applicable, because we're not that. And that's, and it does change, Eric pointed out rapidly, but yeah, they're moving on to new technologies.
You're
But
saying
right now, it's sodium.
sodium?
Yeah, there's a cool Google machine is amazing, but there's all kinds of systems out there, and sodium is one. There's a zinc, there's a nickel, and so on. But lithium has been around for a while, but I don't think anybody's developing those right now.
They're so
I'm sorry?
explosive. The lithium is so explosive. It's
Okay,
Very.
well, maybe that's why. Yeah.
Like design documents, if you have any from this applicant, like on past projects where they designed and seen like actual drawings of like what they're.
Oh, absolutely. No, I'd be happy to provide. We actually put together a sketch for the, hate to, again, it's an ordinance for the county, but we can show exactly what we're looking at this site, which is, near EM's own property. And it is ag too, which is why ag and why, industrial, because that's where we are. The other is, I think it was Wyatt who pointed out, the vast majority of our substations are in the ag. There's not a whole lot in residential or commercial, I think, is there?
Well, there are some in residential, but we. made
Yeah, we're not
conscious
doing
decision.
that.
They did request RP, R4, R5, and we said we're not gonna consider those ones for this because of the runaway thermal risks and things associated with that. But there's also not a terrible amount of substations in industrial districts. Normally, the industrial zone.
They're in the RA,
for
yeah.
Higher uses, and because we allow public utilities by right in the RA for a long time, the utilities have chosen to locate there, and the land is a lot cheaper as well.
Yeah, it'd be helpful to have like maintenance information as well on them, and if we can get that on that website, and how long they last.
Might be prudent just to bring the applicant if they're.
That's fine.
I know a lot of, nothing.
And you may wanna, July 1, this new ordinance that was adopted and signed by the governor, they're actually adopting standards for these statewide, Department of Energy and DEQ, because they are pushing for these. Because they're peakers, but they're not gas-fired peakers and that kind of thing. And I guess the legislature and the governor sees this as a way to give us backup and redundancy during those times when it's really hot and really cold.
What's the footprint of this use?
Yeah.
I mean, is this acres or is
It
this?
is.
It is.
Acres.
Yeah,
Okay.
it depends on the megawatts too, but it basically looks like, shipping containers
Right.
until you get to the size of the megawatts that you want. So they have spacing in
Stack
between
them up.
them, and
Yeah.
it's typically gravel underneath of the fenced compound, and then the ability to walk in and service all of them. And that was one other thing that came up with stacking, is if you stack them, you start to get into
Right.
issues with servicing them and checking on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of has a similar like idea of emergency power, like generators, like
Yeah.
transfer switch.
Yeah.
Comes back on.
All right. Precedent examples, design documents, maintenance materials. Any other follow-up stuff? We'll wait for a committee recommendation to come back. Are we going to, or just, I'm sorry, did the group have?
Could I ask one last question? So would the ordinance say that we only allow certain types of batteries?
Certainly could.
I mean, you can always add to it,
Yeah.
but there are probably some you don't want.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
The sodium are considered the far safe battery. That would be like your, old zinc water base too, that's safe. And they have a longer life, the zinc does.
We'll look into that. I'm a little bit hesitant to pick and choose winners on that, but we'll see what
Yeah, we
documentation.
don't have the knowledge to make that decision, I don't think.
That's why we should
We should
take
be
the
generic.
time on this.
Let the CUP take care of it, because they'll know exactly what they're submitting then.
You could reasonably condition to a technology at the CUP level if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Because it does impact the safety and consideration of the property.
I mean, for, I guess, lithium ion, you mean bigger yards, bigger
Yeah.
clear zones, all that kind of, more water.
The water and being an RA is really, I don't like it.
Okay.
One last item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. So this is just an update on the phase one adoption of the zoning and subdivision ordinance. This was adopted May 13th of 2026. It was effective immediately. There are no policy changes in the ordinance. It's all reorganization, renumbering, and consolidation. And it incorporates applicable missing state code provisions. This will be reflected in E-code in the next coming weeks. It's a big change, so it's gonna take a while to get it up there. In the meantime, it is available on our department under the zoning tab. If you go to the ordinance update, we have the adopted ordinance there, and then also it's identified as the zoning and subdivision crosswalks. If you are familiar with the old ordinance, it has where the requirements of the old ordinance are in the new ordinance, what sections they correlate to. And that's really the only thing we have there, is just an update on that.
Since you all use it a lot, we've done some like Scrivener's error fixes and typographical changes that we found right after adoption. If you come across anything that doesn't seem to match what you knew of how you used it in the old version, let us know. We'll figure out if it qualifies and run it to the county attorney if it qualifies for a typographical change. Otherwise, we'll add it to a list for any future updates that we need to make.
I would say, I've said it before, and I'll say it many more times, the staff and the Berkeley group and our volunteers, Chris, Tom were part of that, others, this is phenomenal, this is.
Yeah, once it's
this is
in
refreshing.
E-code, it's gonna be even more impressive. Right now, the PDF itself is nice, but, the codifiers do a lot of like functionality improvements to it with hyperlinks and stuff that makes it a lot easier to navigate.
Yeah, but thank you guys for all you did to put this together. The next part's gonna be the fun portion.
Yeah, policy changes.
Digging the policy. How many chickens can I have?
So far, you can't have any. I think that's the end of it.
Yep, that's it.
Right. Okay, all right. Second motion to adjourn.
Meeting is over.